are these people?
I feel like Eddie Vedder up here or something. Everybody can hear me okay? Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. It's a beautiful day. I want to thank the organizers. This is a wonderful cause. And hopefully we'll be able to take what happens here today and build a community that can bring about the change that we're all looking for. In Chris Nolan's movie, Oppenheimer, there's a very important scene. It's about the man who made the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. He oversaw the team, the Manhattan Project, that built the bomb. And there's a scene in the movie after the bomb has been perfected and tested, the Trinity device, where Oppenheimer is watching two men in uniform packing up the gadget to send away. And he starts to opine on how it could be best used. He says, if you ignite the bomb at a given out, and they cut him off. They say, it's okay, Dr. Oppenheimer, we got it now. We got it. And thus we transferred the world's most deadly weapon away from the scientists who made it into the men who would use it. And they did use it. 78 years ago today, the United States of America dropped one of Oppenheimer's gadgets on the city of Hiroshima. We don't know how many people died. Ranges from 77,000 to 125,000. We don't know. 3 days later, over the city of Nagasaki, we dropped the second gadget. The total casualties go between 130,000 to 250,000 people dead because of these bombs, but we don't know because most of the evidence vaporized. They don't exist. They're gone. The world's most deadly weapons. The men who dropped these bombs, Paul Tibbets and Charles Sweeney, were men of honor. They're men who were serving their country. Paul Tibbets flew combat missions over Germany in an effort to defeat the Nazi threat. So I don't want to hear anybody say how evil he is. He was doing his duty as an executioner does their duty. He never once voiced any regret for his decision to drop the bomb. To his dying day, he said, what I did was right. You know, and I have some sympathy for Paul Sweeney because when I was in the Marine Corps, I was in a field artillery unit that was nuclear capable. And twice a year, we practiced the procedures we would follow if we were called upon to deliver a nuclear device against a hostile enemy force. And I will tell you right now, with absolute certainty, I and every single Marine would have obeyed those orders had they been issued, because we were the executioners. We weren't the ones who came up with the device. We were the ones who were going to use the device in defense of our nation. But then something happened. In the 1980s, rational thinking seemed to grip the United States. There was an amazing event that took place in June of 1982, right down the road here in New York City. 1 million Americans like yourself gathered there and demonstrated against nuclear war, demonstrated for arms control. At that time, the president of the United States was Ronald Reagan, hardcore conservative. He called the Soviet Union the evil empire. A year after this demonstration, ABC put out a TV series called The Day After. Ronald Reagan watched this series. And after seeing the depiction of what life after a general nuclear exchange between the United States and Soviet Union looked like, he turned to his advisors and he said, is this what it's going to be like? And they said, no, Mr. President, it's going to be far worse. It's going to be worse than you can possibly imagine. And that set off a light bulb in Ronnie Reagan's head. And in December of 1987, he signed the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty with his Soviet counterpart, Mikhail Gorbachev, and began the process of getting rid of J. Robert Oppenheimer's device. It was the first time that the United States and the Soviet Union didn't speak of limiting the growth of nuclear weapons, but actually eliminating these weapons from the face of the earth. And you know who participated in that? You know who led the charge? Who's on the front lines in making this treaty possible? People like me, executioners, formally trained to use nuclear weapons, and we're now having our skill sets corralled into getting rid of nuclear weapons. And ladies and gentlemen, that was a good thing. Unfortunately, we were not able to maintain the momentum. We got knocked off track. Arms control today is not happening. The last remaining arms control treaty, New START, expires in 2026, and there is no negotiation taking place today to renew it. And this is happening at a time when both the United States and Russia are talking about spending billions of dollars, some would even say trillions of dollars, in modernizing their nuclear forces. But this time the modernization will take place without any limitations, without any restrictions imposed by arms control. It will literally be a nuclear arms race. Now, what makes this more dangerous in the 1980s? In the 1980s, we operated with a doctrine called mutually assured destruction. It meant you use your nukes, we use ours, we all die, therefore, let's not use the nukes. Now, that's a pretty stupid way to live life, but it's better than thinking that you can win a nuclear war. Today, the executioners of Americans' nuclear policy believe a nuclear war can be won. We have a doctrine that says that we can preemptively use nuclear weapons anytime we want to. It's not just me saying this, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take the words out of the mouth of a Trump-era arms control official speaking to the Arms Control Association when he said, "It is the goal of the Trump administration that every morning Chinese and Russian leaders wake up, they don't know if this is the day we're going to nuke them or not." That's an honest to God quote. That's insanity. And yet that's America's policy. Now you'll say, wait a minute, Scott, that's Trump. What about Biden? Biden has the exact same policy of nuclear preemption, a policy that's being implemented without any restraint from arms control. And now we bring in the issue of Ukraine. We have a war going on in Ukraine that's not a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's a war between Russia and the collective West, including the United States. The goals of the United States in this conflict are simple: the strategic defeat of Russia. Now, Russia has said that a world without Russia is a world no one will live in, which means if you try to strategically defeat Russia, they will use their nuclear weapons to protect themselves. Yet the goal and objective of the United States in providing more than $180 billion of U.S. taxpayer funding to Ukraine is to enable Ukraine to strategically defeat Russia. That means that our policy is to commit suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, that is literally the definition of insanity. That is crazy. Now, today, in the United States, there's men and women who wear the uniforms of the armed services of the United States who are sworn to protect our nation. Some of these men and women have the job of using nuclear weapons if and when called upon. These are people like Paul Tibbets who will execute that mission. But you know, the people in the world today that have the ability to employ nuclear weapons don't just speak English. They speak Russian. They speak Chinese. They speak North Korean. They speak French. They speak Indian. They speak Hindu, I guess. I should be accurate. Apologize out there. I'm a Marine. Sometimes I say things that I shouldn't. But the bottom line is we no longer have a nuclear monopoly. If nuclear weapons are used, this is a global problem. But we are the only nation in the world that has a doctrine of preemption. We are the only nation in the world actively pursuing a policy supporting Ukraine with the goal of the strategic defeat of Russia that will result in general thermonuclear war. We are the only nation willingly trying on a daily basis, not just to have Russia wake up and China wake up, questioning whether or not this is the day we will use nuclear weapons. Every person in the world wakes up wondering if this is the day. Now let's go back to the movie about Oppenheimer, that scene. J. Robert Oppenheimer turns to the men in uniform and tries to tell them about the nuclear device. And they say, "We got it here, boss. We got it here." Okay, but now we know. We can't claim that we don't know. No one in this audience can say, "I don't know about the threat." Nobody in the world today can say, "I don't know about the threat." And it's time that we have that meeting again with the executioners, with the men and women who will execute nuclear policy. And this time we turn to them, and when they try to say, we got it here, we say, no, we got it here. It's over. The day of nuclear terrorism is done. We must learn to recapture the spirit of disarmament that gripped Ronald Reagan, and there's no one out there right now that's more conservative than Ronald Reagan, that gripped him in his heart to make him believe that having nuclear weapons was insanity and the best course of action for the United States and the world was nuclear disarmament. We need to recapture that spirit, and I'm hoping that today we can begin a process that leads to a moment next summer when we can put 1 million people back into Central Park and send a signal to those who wish to represent us in the White House that nuclear disarmament is the only direction for the United States, that the day of the executioner is over. Thank you very much.